Good evening, everyone. And here we are. If I'm not mistaken, this is our 41st Tanya class. We've done 40 classes, 41 in, and we're still here to do the trekking. Last week, we did a little overview. We started the overview, a bird's eye view tour of Tanya from the beginning. And it's quite an achievement to be here at chapter 18, which is the beginning of a new leg of the journey of Tanya. The author is about to introduce us to a whole new discussion, a whole new topic, a whole new depth. And we've really gone through every single line of Tanya, word by word, from the beginning, from chapter 1, all the way through chapter 17. And at this point, what we are doing is we're going to be taking we want to get a more panoramic view of Tanya. How do we really, what's the flow? What's the trajectory from idea to idea? What are the big ideas? What's the flow? It's like that we don't miss the forest for the trees, which there's a need to do both, right? On the one hand, if you only hear a summary of Tanya, you're missing out on all the depth. You're missing out on all the nuances. You're missing out on all the side conversations that the Alter Rebbe had to bring in to help clarify and to help teach. But today, what we're going to be doing is, last week we did the first 8 chapters of Tanya, 1 through 8. Today we're going to be summarizing chapter 9 through chapter 17. The second unit of 8. Dear friends, let us begin part 2 of our overview. In the first 8 chapters, which is what we learned about last week, the Alter Rebbe taught us gross anatomy, the gross anatomy of the soul. The Alter Rebbe did not really teach us any tips yet or techniques yet. In a certain sense, you could say there was no practical advice given yet. But the Alter Rebbe taught us about ourselves. The Alter Rebbe taught about our souls. We don't have one soul, we have 2 souls. We have an animal soul, we have a godly soul. They each have 10 divine powers. They each have the way they perceive the world, their intellect, the way they process things, the way they feel about things. And they each have a set of behaviors. The animal soul has 3 behaviors, 3 garments: thought, speech, and action, that it can express itself through. Hello, Hillary, good evening. And the godly soul has 3 garments, 3 behaviors that it can express itself through. The Alter Rebbe did not teach us how to navigate a life with 2 dueling souls. We'll learn about that today. But the Alter Rebbe at least laid out the groundwork, which in a certain sense is very comforting. Many people find the early chapters of Tanya very inspiring. Simply the knowledge that we have 2 souls. We can already start identifying the inner tension, the inner struggle between these 2 souls. We can start identifying different impulses and different internal messages, the different voices that we hear. We can start identifying, oh, this is my animal soul talking. Oh, this is my godly soul talking. So simply having that self-awareness, a deeper understanding of who we are on the inside, is a very relieving thing for many people. But when we are at chapter 9, the Alter Rebbe still did not bring all this information back down home. All we know is the facts. We know we have 2 souls. We know what these souls are made up of. But nothing more than that. Okay. But then the Alter Rebbe, in chapter 9, after introducing us to our 2 souls, tells us that we should know these 2 souls don't get along. They are not even indifferent to each other. They're not even just passing along, barely getting along. These 2 souls are actively at war. What are they fighting over? They're fighting over what the Alter Rebbe refers to, quoting a verse from Ecclesiastes, from Koheles, I believe. These are 2 kings fighting over a city. a small city. Who's the small city? The small city is you. The small city is me. We are the small city. And there are two kings that want control over this small city. And as we all know, kings don't do timeshare. Right? There can only be one king. There can't be two kings. We can't share territory. A king is a king. A king, there's only one king. So there are two kings. Each soul sees itself as a full life. It's not like, oh, can I use that pen for 5 minutes? Like, this is my life. I need a body. So we're set up for a battle because there's only one body. There's only one body that can live a life at any given moment. There's only one mind to think with. There's only one pair of eyes to see with. Only one heart to have emotions with. But there's two people inside of you. There's the godly soul you and there's the animal soul you. So the Alter Rebbe says, look at this. You've got a battle. And there's no easy remedy for this battle. There's no easy answer. It's like every president, the first thing they talk about is the Middle East crisis. And every president walks into the White House saying, oh, big ambitions, we're going to deal with the Middle East. And you all understand this is not a simple problem. The Alter says our two-soul problem is not a simple problem. There's no easy two-state solution. There is no two-state solution. The two souls, neither of them want to compromise. Neither of them could see life where there's space for the other soul. You'll tell the godly soul, you know what, you'll have Sunday, then you'll have Tuesday. Every other day you'll switch off. The conversation is over. Right? Breakdown of communication. Breakdown of negotiations. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. Each soul wants complete control and dominion of every single fiber of this body, every single atom, every mode of expression, every potential, every tool within this body, each soul wants. And that is life. And this is a conflict that defines our lives. And it's a conflict that we need to manage. Life is all about understanding that we have this conflict and understanding that there's different ways of how to deal with the conflict. So how do you deal with the conflict? So the Alter Rebbe says, well, there's a few different options of what this conflict could look like. A few different scenarios. And we give these scenarios titles. The first scenario is where a person is able to build up his godly soul to such a strong degree that his godly soul goes on the offense and totally crushes the animal soul. And the animal soul is literally defeated in the war. To the point that this godly soul, he has lost all firing power. He has lost any defensive positions. And this animal soul is simply barely a force. A tiny little force within this person. It's there, but it's hiding in a corner. And that's it. The war's over. The battle is over. So, right, not only you won the battle, you won the war. And a person who could reach that stage, that they have resolved the conflict. How do they resolve the conflict? Well, they got rid of the enemy. The godly soul won. The animal soul already raised the white flag. He says, I am done, I am beaten, and there's no chance of this animal soul ever rebounding and gaining that strength again. Such a person has a very good life, no? That's it. No more conflict, no more troubles, no more problems. Life becomes very simple at that point because there's no tug of war between two different drives within you. The animal soul is gone. This is called a tzaddik. This scenario is what we call a tzaddik. A tzaddik, what makes a righteous person righteous? Define that for me. Is every nice-looking guy who does good things a righteous person? Are they a tzaddik? What has to happen for a person to be a tzaddik? Well, the Alter says very, very simple. do they not have any more an animal soul at play? If there is an animal soul that has an active force in your life, that is called, then you're not a tzaddik. If you have no animal soul, welcome to the club. You're a tzaddik. All right? Now, the Alter Rebbe gave us a few different variations for what a tzaddik looks like. There's something called an incomplete tzaddik. There is something called the complete tzaddik, a higher level tzaddik, who has won his war even better than the lower level tzaddik. But we're not going to get into the different shades of tzaddik. This is the basic idea. A tzaddik is somebody who has no animal soul, who is trying to gain control. The battle is over. The war is over. Everybody goes back home. All the reservists go back to their homes. There's no need for the mobilization of the army. It's over, right? It's all done. The threat is gone. Okay. Now, the Alter Rebbe says, but don't think that your goal in life or your aspirations in life should be to be a tzaddik. Don't think that this is within your cup of tea. The Alter Rebbe says to be a tzaddik is a very unique type of soul. You have to be born with the potential to be a tzaddik. And a tzaddik is a rarity. Very few people get to be a tzaddik. Not because they don't put in the hard work. It's because they're not even built with the potential to be a tzaddik. Most of humanity don't have the inner potential to be a tzaddik, and therefore it is not what is expected of you. God does not expect of you to be a tzaddik. You shouldn't expect from yourself to be a tzaddik. If you expect of yourself to be a tzaddik, you're setting yourself up for failure. That's very unhealthy, right? Never have expectations that are impossible to meet. That's a bad life. So the Alter Rebbe says, don't worry. To be a tzaddik that's a special thing. None of us have to worry about it, right? Like the top 1% get to be a tzaddik. We're the other 99%. We're just the commoners. We're the regulars. But if we want to understand the different models of what this conflict could look like in different types of people, there's the tzaddik. That's category number one. And once again, what's a tzaddik? The battle is over. The godly soul won. The animal soul is gone. It's over. A quick little thing. I once heard this. A quick little exercise. If any of you are wondering if you're a tzaddik, there's a very simple exercise you could do. For 24 hours, make a decision, just for 24 hours, decide that you are going to shut off your inner filter. You're going to shut off any form of inhibition. And any impulse that you have, you will immediately act upon it. If you don't get arrested within a half hour, you're a tzaddik. If the only thing that comes out of you when you shut off all inhibition is Torah and mitzvahs and holiness, you're a tzaddik. So that's very powerful. Tzaddik is somebody, the only force that he feels within himself or herself is to do good, a drive for holiness. This is what's instinctive. That's very special. That's a tzaddik because there's no animal soul, there's no inner negativity that's pushing an agenda to do anything negative. That's a tzaddik. The next category is what we call a rasha. What does a rasha mean? So a rasha is commonly translated as a bad person, a wicked person. That's like the common translation. But the Alter Rebbe says, look, that's a very elementary way of understanding the word rasha. When we look at the word rasha from a spiritual perspective, a rasha does not mean somebody who's evil. A rasha could be a person who is very kind, very good, very likable. A rasha is a certain state within this conflict. The rasha is the person who has let the animal soul gain some ground. The animal soul gets some victories. He lets weakness take over his life. The Alter Rebbe says such a person is called a Rasha. You know why you're called a Rasha? Because you have let negativity enter into your conscious life. And the Alter Rebbe said, I just want you to know that's not healthy. It's not normal. It's a very powerful idea that the Alter Rebbe says that that's not normal. You see, we think, look at this, let's do simple math. If you have two souls, a godly soul and an animal soul, each one wants control. On average, it should be 50-50. Meaning that's probably what it's going to look like. Or let's say 75-25, but come on. The animal soul's going to get its way sometimes. Right? The Alter Rebbe says, no, that's unhealthy. For the animal soul to ever actually gain a victory. And I want to define what gaining a victory means. For the animal soul to gain a victory, which means that there will be a moment of your life where you are faced with a choice. Your animal soul looks at this from the most animalistic perspective, from a place of weakness, from a place of short-sightedness. And then you have a godly soul who says, no, this is not smart. This is not what we should be doing. This is not how we should be reacting. And we go and choose what our animal soul wants to do. That means we are inviting the weakness of the animal soul into our lives. And even once, that's weak. That's unhealthy. That's spiritually unhealthy. And not only it's spiritually unhealthy, it doesn't need to be that way. It's a very empowering message. We tend to think like, I'm going to have good days and bad days. I'm going to give in. By the way, the problem is not having bad days. The problem is allowing that bad day to then hijack your life. The Alter says, if there's even one moment of one day, once a year, that you will allow negativity to take a hold of your life, that's the definition of a Rasha. And a Rasha means that there's room for growth. The status quo isn't good. Animals are impulsive creatures. That's what an animal is. For the good and for the bad. Some animals, by the way, have unbelievable kindness. Some animals are mean and sinister and violent. But essentially, there's no difference between one animal and another animal. They're all working off of impulse. They're all hardwired to react a certain way, and that is what they do. That's an animal. So an animal is controlled by their impulses. Animals don't control their impulses. Their impulses control them. What makes a human is what sets us apart is that we also have impulses, but we get to be in control of our impulses. The Alter Rebbe says, when a human being, even for one moment, allows his weaknesses, his impulses, to dictate his life, you are denying yourself your own humanity. You're not living up life as a human. This is not normal. This is not healthy. You're not an animal, you're a human. So the title Rasha is given to anybody that in this conflict, the animal soul is able to break some of those defensive lines of the animal soul, of the godly soul. It's able to break and gain some momentum, which means that there's a part of your life, a part of your conscious life where the animal soul is choosing and dictating what is happening in your life. What's an example of this? Let's just give a little bit of a basic example. The Alter Rebbe, by the way, is very clear in Tanya. We're not only talking over here about religious things. We're even talking about basic life, social life, which, by the way, everything is governed by the Torah, right? The Torah is not only interested in our relationship with God, the Torah is interested in our relationship with our spouse, with our friends, with our community. So what's an example? Let's say something happens, all right? We get upset at our spouse. That happens. Something happens. I wanted my spouse to do something or not do something. They didn't do it. I'm upset. You know that you getting upset about this is petty. Right? But you're upset. You know that you're going to regret it tomorrow if you make a fuss about this, but you're upset. So that anger or that frustration is weakness. It's coming from the animal soul. It's not coming from a rational place. It's not coming from a healthy place. It's not coming from a position of strength. The opposite. We all know it's not appropriate. You all know that you're going to be apologizing if you act upon this anger. So that is where you have a choice. You have a choice. Am I now going to allow that impulse to take control of my life, even for a moment? If you allow weakness to take hold of your life, that's a Russia. What it means is that you have work to do. What does it mean you have work to do? What it means is you're not living up life as a human. This is not the way life is meant to look like. You're meant to have animalistic impulses, and you're meant to not listen to them. You're meant to have them and then not listen to them. If these weaknesses start dictating your life, the Alter Rebbe says, I just want you to know it's an empowering message. The message is you could do better. And I want to teach you how to do better. And the doing better is the third category, which is called the Beinoni. What is a Beinoni? A Beinoni is identical to a Russia. There's only one little difference between them. What's a Russia? A Russia is somebody he's got a godly soul, so therefore he has good moments. He's inspired. He has moments of connection. But then he also has an animal soul, so he has moments of weakness. So what does a Russia do? Sometimes he has good days, sometimes he has bad days. Sometimes he's strong, sometimes he lets those weaknesses take control. The Beinoni is just like the Russia. He has moments of weakness. He has a godly soul, an animal soul. The animal soul also has bad days. The animal soul also sends him those impulses. Let's react this way or that way, or let's go after this temptation or that desire. The only difference is that the Beinoni says, no, we're not going to do it. So the Beinoni is human. Let's think about it. Let's use a scenario. Let's say, I'll talk from the man's perspective, because that's my perspective, right? Let's say something happened and something just triggered me. And I know that I'm going to be getting upset at my wife right now. I'm upset. I feel that frustration. I feel even that anger at my spouse. Why did you do this? Why didn't you do this? Why did you forget about this? I feel hurt, neglected, whatever. Okay. Right, it happens. Am I the only one? Does the Beinoni feel that? The Beinoni feels that too. So the Beinoni is very human. The Beinoni is me and you. The Beinoni is not some Superman, like some people when they take New Year's resolutions. They literally imagine themselves being a different person than who they are today. A Beinoni is it's the same person. There's only one key difference. The Russia gives into that weakness and acts upon it and allows himself to think about it and allows himself to then speak about it and allows himself to even act upon it. The Beinoni right away says, you know what? It's inappropriate. It's wrong. It's not the right decision. We're not doing it. That's the Beinoni. The Beinoni is the person who the Alter Rebbe says never ever. It's unnegotiable. The animal soul never gets to call the shots. The animal soul never gains the upper foot over the godly soul. And the godly soul has a line of defense, and nothing goes by that line of defense. So, if the animal soul wants to do something, you got to check it first out with the godly soul. Want to eat breakfast? 1 second. Let's check in with the godly soul. Is it good now? It's good? The food's kosher? Okay, we'll do it. Easier said than done, no? You want to be a Beinoni? So the Alter Rebbe says, yeah, I'll teach you the techniques. It's actually easier than you think it is. But this is the definition. To be a good gatekeeper. Be a gatekeeper. A Beinoni is somebody who has a very healthy animal soul. The Beinoni knows, he knows exactly what it means to be somebody with weaknesses, somebody with impulses and urges. which are unhealthy and weak and inappropriate. He knows all that. He knows because he's got that inside. He has to deal with his animal soul every single day. The only difference is that he's just always staying vigilant and saying no. And that's a choice we could all make. So the Alter Rebbe says, let me teach you the tricks of the trade. How could you be a Beinoni? And the Alter Rebbe maintains that being a Beinoni is not something that maybe you could do in a long time. Let me shut off my ringer over here. The Alter Rebbe says being a Beinoni is very practical. Every Jew could be a Beinoni today. All you have to know is, first of all, some little bits of pieces of information about yourself. You have to know that it's possible. You have to know a few different tricks. And if you know the tricks and you're willing to put in the effort, you could be a Beinoni. How do we be a Beinoni? This is how to do it. Number one, we have to understand why being a Beinoni is humanly possible. Just think about it. I've got two souls. The animal soul is no weakling. The animal soul is a beast. The animal soul is an animal. It's got brute force. This is not a small opponent to deal with. And by the way, the godly soul is considered the weaker soul. If we even look into our own lives, which soul do we feel with more force? When we're hungry. When we have an urge to do a mitzvah versus an urge to go eat lunch because I didn't eat since 7 a.m. this morning, which soul screams louder? Which soul is stronger? So the animal soul is the stronger soul. The godly soul, it's very special, but it doesn't have that brute power that the animal soul has. And the Alter Rebbe is telling us that we could really live a life, that we could always stand there and tell the animal soul, no, we're in control. Really? How's that possible? So the Alter Rebbe says, well, I'll teach you a few rules. I'll teach you a little bit about yourself. And I'll show you that, in fact, the godly soul actually does possess the power. Even though on the surface, it maybe seems like the godly soul is weaker, really the godly soul has certain advantages that if it takes advantage of those advantages, you will be able to always maintain a position of strength and never lose control. And what the Alter Rebbe teaches is that it's totally in your hands. It's even naturally in your hands to always be a Beinoni because you always have that control. Now, where does that come from? So the Alter Rebbe teaches us a few ideas. Number one, how could you always succeed to keep your animal soul at bay? Point number one is the Alter Rebbe teaches us a rule which actually has nothing to do with spirituality. It is a rule that has to do with human psychology, which is that every single human being, simply by virtue of the fact that you were born, which means you were born with this. You didn't have to earn it. You don't need to develop it. It's not like some talent or some technique that you have to build up later on in life. Hey, what's going on over here? The phone is off the hook over here. Okay. Every human being is born with something that's called the mind controls the heart. And this is natural. This is innate. This is the way you were born. Which means we all have a heart which has emotions, impulses. In an animal, the second that an animal feels a certain impulse and a certain emotion, it acts upon it. There's no inhibition. An animal's not capable of that. Being a human means that while you could have a heart that could be pumping with an emotion, it could be overflowing, it could be boiling with an emotion, the mind always has the final say. And the mind is always able to say, not a good idea. Or the mind could say, we're not going to do it. That's what it means to be human. It's one of the first things we teach our children. Control yourself. I know you're upset. It doesn't mean you got to break a window, right? There's no such thing as a human being able to say, I was so upset, I couldn't help myself. I just had to go, and I don't know, What do you mean couldn't help yourself? You're a human. There's no excuse for a human being. If you are a human being, you are born with this idea that the mind controls the heart. So says the Alter Rebbe, your animal soul is an impulsive creature. It's associated with the heart. Your godly soul is a mindful soul. Its strength is the mind. Its strength is the brain. Its strength is the power of awareness and mindfulness and a conscience. And simply by the fact that you are a human being, your mind controls your heart. Which means that if there's ever a conflict between the godly soul and the animal soul, who automatically wins? Godly soul. There is no such thing in a human being that the mind is incapable of controlling the heart. And if that is true about any human being, he has to go see a neurologist. You're not healthy. You got to go see a psychiatrist. This is not normal. You need help. If you're a human being who your mind cannot control the heart, at any given moment, you are not healthy. And that has nothing to do with Jewish spirituality. That has nothing to do with Tanya. This is the truth of life. So the Alter Rebbe says, even though the godly soul seems to be a little bit of a weaker opponent against this brute animal soul, it's got the power of the mind. Mind controls the heart. Which means, says the Alter Rebbe, we as human beings never lose control. We willingly give up control. There is no such thing as somebody saying, what could I do? My animal soul at a moment of weakness. What could I do? I mean, what could you do? You could have done a lot. You could have simply used the one power that you have automatically, which is the mind controls the heart. It's not that you couldn't control yourself. You didn't want to control yourself. You chose not to control yourself. So the Alter Rebbe says, but that's inexcusable. That's a denial of what makes you a human. You're allowing yourself to devolve into an animal for a moment. Being weak is not human. Being strong is human. Being in control is human. So the Alter Rebbe says, you've got the power. The whole system is rigged for you. Your animal soul was born to win. Point number 2. There's another strength that the godly soul has over the animal soul. And the Alter Rebbe uses the beautiful analogy that comes from Tanya, and the Alter Rebbe builds it upon another verse from Ecclesiastes. There's a simple truth in spiritual physics that a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. In the laws of physics and the laws of displacement, you only displace the exact same volume that you disturbed that displacement with. Which means if you have a pail of water and you put a brick into the pail of water, what's going to happen? The water in the pail is going to get displaced. It's either going to rise up or it's going to spill over. But how much water gets displaced? It's the exact same volume as the brick. However many square inches the brick is, that's how many square inches of water is going to get displaced in this pail. When it comes to light and darkness, those laws of physics don't apply anymore. When you walk into a dark room and you just turn a little light on, you don't only dispel that volume of darkness, right? However much volume of light you introduced, that's how much darkness gets displaced. No. So much more darkness disappears. The godly soul is light. The godly soul brings the enlightenment and the beauty and the clarity of holiness, of godliness, of spirituality. The animal soul is dark. It's foolish. It's short-sighted. It's weak. When we introduce the power of the godly soul, even though the godly soul may be a little bit weak compared to the animal soul. But a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. It's a superpower. What's the definition of a superpower? A regular power means you're following the laws of physics. You're following the laws of nature. So you have a power within the laws of nature. A superpower means you're not playing by the rules. Superpower means you get to twist the rules of nature. Right? The laws of science, the laws of physics don't apply to you anymore. The godly soul has the superpower, that a little bit of light. And it's not fear to the animal soul. The animal soul is so strong, comes with so much force, and a little bit of light, and all that force disappears. That's the power of the godly soul. So the Alter says, you could win. You have the power to win. All you got to do is use a little bit of your energy of your godly soul. Number one, mind controls the heart. You could be a gatekeeper, boom, complete control, because you have the power of the mind. Number two, you could immediately weaken the animal soul. A little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. The animal soul may seem like a big force to deal with, but the whole thing evaporates the moment you introduce a little bit of the energy of your godly soul. So the Alter says you could be a Beinoni. All you got to do is to want to be a Beinoni. All you got to do is to want to be in control. All you got to do is not accept weakness. Don't accept it. That's the biggest problem. You have to believe in yourself. A lot of people have moments of weaknesses, and they say, whatever, I'm human. What can I do? The Alter says, no, you got to believe in yourself more. That's not healthy. You have the power to be strong. Not tomorrow, not in a week. It's not like, I got to do a lot of exercise. Maybe in 6 months I'll be able to be in control. No, today, right now. All you got to do is to want to. So the Alter says a Beinoni is so easy to do. The Beinoni is somebody who makes a commitment and gets him or herself in a great space of consistency. A consistent desire and a consistent habit, a strong habit of being in control. And that's called a Beinoni. A Beinoni is somebody who's committed to being in control, and they're so committed to the life of a Beinoni that to give into a weakness is like an impossibility. That's really the strength of a Beinoni. That through the power of a certain lifestyle, in their mind, it's a certainty, I'm never going back. That's a Beinoni. Okay. So the Alter says a few things. Number one, the Beinoni has to know that you're not a tzaddik. You're not a tzaddik. You can't ever take life easy. You have to know that you have tremendous strength and you could keep this level of control. But the Alter says it's always going to be control. You're always winning wars. You never won the battle. You've still got an arch enemy that's waiting for a moment of vulnerability. Your animal soul is strong. It has not been weakened at all. And it is waiting for a vulnerable space where it could penetrate your defenses. So the Alter says, yes, you are very strong. You could be a Beinoni. Your godly soul, the system is rigged for you. You will win 100% of the time, but you gotta stay vigilant. If you take life easy, your animal soul is gonna see it, and that's a vulnerable Beinoni. A successful Beinoni is the Beinoni that knows that he is this close to being a Rasha. So part of the strength of the Beinoni is knowing how close he is to weakness. Why? The Alter says if you're a Beinoni, don't convince yourself you're such a holy guy. You're just like anybody else. You've got the same animal soul like anybody else. The only difference is that other person who's the Rasha is not using your self-control tips. He's not being a Beinoni. But essentially, you're the same guy. You also have those impulses. You just control them. You just say no to them. So the Alter says it's very important. A Beinoni has to know that he is succeeding, but just succeeding. And the battle is not over. The war is not over. Sorry, he's winning battles. He's not winning the war. I'm sorry, right? He could win one battle at a time, but the war is never over. And in that sense, your whole life you got to stay vigilant, and don't convince yourself that you're a tzaddik. To be a tzaddik is none of your business. The Alter makes it very clear. Tzaddikim are beautiful. They're inspiring. They have a role to play within the Jewish people, but the Alter also says a Beinoni has to be in a growth mentality. This is part of the Beinoni keeping on their toes. You got to keep on innovating. You got to keep on growing. You got to keep on seeing how you could strengthen yourself, how to grow in your Yiddishkeit, how to grow in your Torah and mitzvahs. And a Beinoni is not a Beinoni if you take life easy. Right? You can't take life easy. There's no such thing as getting into a good habit and getting into a certain ritual, and my life is like an autopilot. Yeah, I'm just going through my motions of life. The Alter says there's no way you're a Beinoni with that attitude. A Beinoni is somebody who is just like anybody, right? It's the same thing with exercise. You want to exercise, you got to do it every single day. You got to sometimes work a little bit harder. If you start taking it easy, you know what happens? You go downhill, right? There's no way of maintaining your strength. If you're not actively exercising, you lose your strength. So the Beinoni has to keep on growing and has to be challenging himself. It has to be looking to push himself out of his comfort zone. So the Beinoni has to stay vigilant, and a Beinoni has to stay active. And that's how you could keep up the lifestyle of a Beinoni with a certain sense of consistency. The final point that we learned, which is such a critical point, which brings this all together, is the Alter Rebbe says, okay, we know that we could be in control of our lives, never give in to weakness, at every single moment. You know what the only thing that you need is? You need to want to. Right? I know I could do it, but do I want to do it? And that's a very big commitment to every single moment be in control over our lives, over our decisions, over our behaviors, over every single thought, over every single speech, over every single action. The Alter Rebbe says the only way to do that is by inspiring yourself. You got to keep yourself inspired. If you're not inspired, you're not going to want to invest the energy to be a Beinoni. You got to want to be a Beinoni. So first, the Alter Rebbe tells you that you could be a Beinoni. I just want you to know, being a Beinoni is very human, is very practical. But then you got to want to be a Beinoni. You got to want to show up for the fight. So the Alter Rebbe says, being a Beinoni means daily maintenance. You have to have fuel in your tank, which we call inspiration. When you're inspired, then you'll have all that, you'll muster up the courage and the willpower and the stamina to show up. Give your godly soul the energy that it needs to show up to the fight, be in control, hold its ground, stay vigilant. That only works if you're inspired. So the Alter Rebbe says a Beinoni, this is basic maintenance for the Beinoni. You don't miss an oil change on your car, don't miss maintenance on your Beinoni. You know what maintenance is? Daily prayer. And daily prayer is not just about opening up a book and reading words, but prayer is a contemplative and a meditative experience. The Alter Rebbe teaches us, inspiration is not what we think inspiration is. We usually think of, the word inspiration usually means to us like something that happened to me. Like I went to Israel and we went to the Kotel and I was inspired by the Kotel. Okay, that's not real inspiration. That's not an inspiration you could rely on. That's cute, that's nice. Real inspiration has to be something from within. Which means there's two forms of inspiration. One is things that happen to you from the outside. Experiences. That's not what the Alter Rebbe means. The Alter Rebbe means inspiration that we create from within. Inspire yourself using your own mind and your own heart. The other form of inspiration is cute and nice, but it's not lasting. You can't do anything real with it. Cheap inspiration is like lighter fluid, right? What do? If you have a barbecue, If you're using charcoal, right? It's summertime, so we got to use analogies from what we're busy with. Okay, so if you have a charcoal barbecue, you can't take a match and light charcoal, right? Because it takes a lot of work to get charcoal on fire. So what do you got to use to get a charcoal barbecue going? You got to use lighter fluid, right? Oh, lighter fluid is beautiful. You spray some lighter fluid, you put in a match. Whoa, look at this fire. It's beautiful. What's the only problem? 30 seconds later, it's history. So you can't make a barbecue with a lighter fluid. By the time you're going to try to put a hot dog on, it's cold again already. So the lighter fluid is only good to get the coals on fire. But the coals is where it's at. Cheap inspiration is good, that sometimes it helps get us inspired. It helps get us on a road where we could actually gain real inspiration. But real inspiration is where it's at, which means that we have to be personally and deeply motivated and inspired. And we have to have things that really, it can't be superficial things. It has to be that we have a real deep appreciation in our mind, in our heart. And that's real inspiration that we could then, actually go and cook a hamburger with, right? Real inspiration that we could bring to life. Lighter fluid doesn't work for life. So the author says you have to have real inspiration. And that is a daily exercise, which means like this. Don't neglect your godly soul, or else you won't be able to live life with the benefits of your godly soul, right? Don't neglect that oil change, even though it's annoying. Got to go in the middle of the day, got to go, get an oil change to schlep. You got to do it, or else your car's going to start breaking down on you. Your godly soul needs a daily inspiration. What that looks like is you wake up in the morning. Don't get distracted. Our animal soul is always pulling for our attention. No. In the morning, you got to spend time, focus on your godly soul. Meditate. Think about what matters to us. Think about godly things, about holy things. Think about what it means to have a relationship with God. Think about what it means that we have a piece of God inside of us. Think about what Judaism means, what Torah means, what mitzvahs mean to us. One of the good things is Chassidus. You have to study Chassidus. That's why it's so important to study Chassidus. The Chassidus, the teachings of Chassidus, give us the fuel that our soul needs, which we can then think about, and then it can start touching us. It can start having an impact on us. And it can start inspiring us. But not inspiration that we went to Disneyland and, it was magical. No. You got to bring the magic inside of you. There's once a chassid of one of the Chabad rabbis in Russia. He told me, I really want to go to Israel. So you know what the rabbi told him? Make Israel right here. You want to go to Israel? Make Israel here. It's a very deep story. Sometimes people want to go to Israel because I want to be in a holy place. No. It's not about going places. You got to make it here. You got to make it inside of you. You're looking for Israel somewhere else? Israel's inside of you. You can make it inside of you. You got to have real inspiration. If you have real inspiration, then you have literal stamina. You have power. You just charged your batteries. You have fuel in your tank. Now you could show up to your day, and now your godly soul has that power to show up and to be itself. And if you have daily gas in your tank, then you'll be inspired, then you'll have motivation, and then you could live the life of a Beinoni. And the Alter Rebbe says, but don't worry, you don't even need serious emotions. You just need a little bit of inspiration that touches you. You have to feel touched. You have to feel a certain desire. You have to feel a certain warmth that comes from our meditation and from our contemplation. The Alter Rebbe says, don't worry, to have serious spiritual emotions is a very difficult thing. Many people, for us to have that type of visceral emotional connection to a mitzvah, like we have to a new car, that's very difficult. But you could be touched. You could be inspired. Your heart could stir. You could have a certain warmth, a spark of an emotion. The Alter Rebbe says that's all you need. That's enough. Do that every single day. Don't neglect your godly soul. And the Alter Rebbe says it is easy. The Alter Rebbe uses that word. It's easy. You could be a Beinoni. And we know it. Whenever we inspire ourselves, we're in a position of strength. And the Alter Rebbe says when you are in a position of strength, weakness does not have any strength. This is not an equal battle. You are the stronger opponent. You just have to be inspired. You have to know that you have the power to do it, and you have to utilize it. You have to take advantage of it. You have to invest yourself into living the life of a Beinoni. And with this, the Alter Rebbe concludes chapter 17. How do you be a Beinoni? Meditate every single day. Make sure you're inspired. Make sure you have that power to show up to the table. And the Alter Rebbe says you have within you the power to win, and go and live life. Take the bull by its horns. Take control of your life. Don't let your impulses dictate your life. You dictate your life. You dictate your life. You tell your impulses what we're going to be doing. That's what a Beinoni is. A Beinoni is the healthiest person alive. A Beinoni is somebody who is living life as a human every single moment, never allowing a moment of weakness in their life. The Alter Rebbe says it's easy, it's possible, it could be done, it should be done, and therefore it must be done. And we don't have to worry that we have an animal soul with negative impulses. Don't worry, that's human. We're all human. Let's not convince ourselves that we're going to be saints or angels tomorrow. We're very humans. You've got an animal. It's like simply like this. When you go, you go surf the internet, one of the beautiful innovations of the World Wide Web is that when you go on a website, there's advertisements, there's pop-ups. What's a pop-up? You want to go on a news site, and all of a sudden something shows up that you didn't ask for it. An advertisement. By the way, I once read that the guy who invented pop-ups has deep regret. He expressed this many times. He ruined the world by unleashing pop-ups to the world. So you go to a website, all of a sudden there's a pop-up. So you have a choice right now. Either you could engage with that pop-up. Oh, let's read. That's interesting. Looks all colorful. And start clicking links. And you can start downloading viruses, right? Or you could say, no, I'm not interested. Look for the X. Press X. Not interested. The Alter Rebbe says that's life. We're always going to have the impulses of the animal soul. We're going to have those pop-ups. They're annoying. They're not called for. We don't like them. We don't want them to show up. So we have a choice. Are we going to engage with that pop-up and say, yeah, let's keep on going down this rabbit hole? Or are we simply going to say, no, I'm not interested. Let's look for the X button. Yeah, I'm moving on with my life. That's a Beinoni. There's a pop-up from your animal soul? No problem. Move on. Simply move on. You have the strength to. You have the ability to. It's normal to. And these are the techniques. So, dear friends, look at that. We're so punctual. It's 8:30. With this, we conclude our summary of Tanya, our bird's eye view journey of Tanya, from chapter 1 through chapter 17. And dear friends, buckle up. Next week we begin chapter 18. A brand new deep dive, a brand new journey. And I want to thank you all for joining and wish you all a wonderful night. And of course, if you have any questions, which I'm sure there always is, we could sit here, we could discuss. Let's keep on making sure that we understand it.
But I want to ask you a question. Not a Beinoni, but I forgot the name of it now.
Russia?
Rasha. Okay. So listening to all what you're saying, I have to think I'm a Rasha. Okay. But my goal from what you're saying.
Joel, I'm a rabbi. Rabbis don't accept confessions.
Oh, all right. I'm a Rasha. I'm giving it.
No, you have to understand. The Alter Rebbe wants us to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
You can only grow if you're honest, if you're real.
Right. I'm being honest. I'm being honest.
But being honest does not mean that we start berating ourselves. We start ourselves and allowing ourselves to wallow in our negativities.
Okay.
And to become negative people. That's the worst. right? It's like that vicious
So
cycle
what I was gonna say
of
was that
shame and guilt.
my goal is to become a Beinoni. That's
Yeah,
what
we
I
are.
need to
Yeah,
try.
and not
Uh,
only that, you could even some may even argue that as long as you are putting in the work to be a Beinoni, you can't be called a Russia.
okay.
Because a Russia is somebody who is just living a life of weakness and not even doing anything about it. But if you're doing something about it, you can't be called a Russia. Some say,
At least you're trying.
or
You're trying.
you got to be genuinely trying. Those people who are trying their whole
I
life.
mean, honestly trying. Right.
Yeah,
Honest.
sincerely. If you're sincerely trying, genuinely trying, some say that's not a Russia. The
Okay.
whole idea of a Russia is somebody who has weakness and allows himself to be there. Even if he doesn't want to be there, but you're not putting in the real heavy lifting to get yourself out.
Okay.
You can't be but the point is not over here to give ourselves that hard time.
Okay.
This is not part of the program.
Okay.
We'll learn about that later on in Tanya. The worst thing is focusing on our negativity and making it into a problem. We're here focused on solutions. We're here focused on growth. Yeah,
Okay.
to grow, you got to know where you are right now. But the point is not just to give yourself a sentence and
I understand. I understand.
so yeah.
You try to change yourself every day to be better. Right. Right.
Yeah.
You were excellent tonight.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Joel. Only tonight?
Almost every time.
Almost every time. There you go.
Rabbi, how does Jewish guilt come into play then?
Jewish guilt is not good.
Oh, because that's the big running joke, right? But there's
Exactly. Chapter 26 and chapter 27 of Tanya will learn all about guilt and how to manage our guilt.
it will be beneficial. Thank you, Rabbi. Have a wonderful night.
Take care,
Right.
Hillary. You as
Thank
well.
you very much.
Wonderful.